and gentlemen, it is Wednesday, I hope. No, it's Thursday, actually. It's Thursday, February 18th, 2021. I'm here with Cameron Tymstra, who's the CEO of Tarachi Gold. Tarachi put out news yesterday. They also put out news last week. But Cameron and I wanted to wait until sort of both of these things were out so that he could address both of these project sets. You put out news that you kind of nailed down the final agreement and I guess started the clock at Magistral. I mean, now that you've got that signed, all of the activities that you need to get done pre-production, things sort of kick off now. And then yesterday you put out drill results from Ladura and San Javier, and you have some actually pretty good maps today, which is nice. The maps that are released were a little like, I don't know what's going on here. It makes more sense now, and you're clearly more positive about both of those areas than I thought you might be based on the descriptions yesterday. But I mean, why don't we start out with Magistral, because I think that's really, that's probably the main thing a lot of shareholders are keeping an eye on, because that's the obvious value proposition, if you will. So now that you've got this thing signed, what happens now? What's the next few months look like?
Yeah, so for the first step for us down at Magistral, is going to be to kick off the preliminary economic assessment work with Ausenco Engineering. And the first step of that is to basically systematically resample the tailings basin, so we can, more confidently define the resource there and put a 43-101 compliant resource estimate on there. I mean, historical estimates show 1.3 million tons at just over 2 grams per ton gold, which is a great size and a great grade. But we do want to make sure that we have that well defined, and also for mine planning purposes in the future. And that sampling will provide the material that we need to conduct a new suite of metallurgical test work with Ausenco. One thing we want to make sure is that the flow sheet for the plant is the right flow sheet going forward, and will help us achieve the sort of levels of gold recovery that we're looking for, which is probably in the 70 to 75% range. So we also want to manage the copper content that's in there. We have found that there's a little bit of cyanide soluble copper in the tailings, and has a tendency to consume cyanide and drive up costs. As this is a tailings reprocessing operation, we're not paying for drilling, we're not paying for blasting, crushing, grinding, that sort of thing. So all of our costs are really on the metallurgy side, and in this case, it's going to be cyanide consumption. So we're going to be working closely with Ausenco over the next couple of months to really define what, if any, modifications maybe need to be made to the plant. The previous operators had already gone through the process of converting it from a carbon and leach system to a Merrill-Crowe system. But we want to verify that Merrill-Crowe system that was installed is actually going to be capable of handling the sort of feed rates of about 1,000 tons per hour that we're looking for there. So that PEA process is expected to take about 12 to 14 weeks once we get started. So perhaps sort of end of May, we can expect some results there. And that will also provide us with a clear or more well-defined pathway to production in terms of timelines, and also what sort of capital costs we're going to be talking about in terms of commissioning and modifying the plant.
Now, 1,000 tons a day, you've got, give or take, 4 years. I mean, you've mentioned to me before that this is a camp that really hasn't seen a lot of activity, although it was a fairly well-known high-grade camp in the past. How do things look in terms of potential local sources to extend mine life or enlarge the resource, both?
Yeah, so I mean, we went down there a couple of weeks ago, and we were pretty impressed with what we saw with the plant. But what we also saw is certainly some more upside potential there to potentially extend the life of the asset beyond 4 years. There's some other tailings resources in the area. They're not included in this acquisition, but we're certainly looking into them right now to find those owners and see if they'd be interested in doing deals with us, so that we can do some metallurgical test work on that material and see if it's going to be something that we can feed into our plant and that we can actually recover gold from. There's probably about 700,000 tons of tailings just about 1.5 kilometers to the west. Right. Those tailings were originally actually excavated from our tailings basin and stacked up on a heap leach there back in the mid-90s. We don't really know how successful that was. They only operated it for a couple of years, so I think they probably had some problems. So we expect that material probably still contains a lot of gold. Might be something that we can bring to the mill, and 700,000 tons would be an extra 2 years of life. Right. There's also other tailings in the area that we're going to look into, and also the hard rock resources. So this acquisition doesn't come with any hard rock mineral concessions. Right. Tailings are part of the surface rights property in Mexico, but the old mine site is 500 meters, maybe 800 meters to the east of the mill. So there's an old shaft there. There's old underground workings. We estimate maybe 1 million ounces of gold were probably taken out of there over the last couple hundred years. But it hasn't seen any sort of mining or any exploration work in sort of at least 50 years, we think. So there's still some artisanal miners that go in the old underground workings. We actually met with some of them while we were there. They claim to be getting 50 to 80 grams per ton of gold out of the material that they take out. And obviously, they're probably high grading the best parts, but it still goes to show that there's some high grade material down there, and certainly some potential if we could acquire those resources or those mineral concessions to explore on those in the future, and potentially even convert the mill to processing hard rock material. Add a little crushing and grinding circuit at the front, for example, and further extend the life of the asset that way.
So assuming everything goes perfectly, which of course is what always happens in mining. What's your timeline to starting to feed the processing circuit?
What I'm telling people right now is early next year. We'll have a better understanding of that once we complete the PEA work with Ausenco, because a lot of that is going to come down to what modifications we might have to do to the plant to get it operational. We also have to do a little bit of work at the existing tailing storage facility. The previous operators a number of years ago, I think they experienced like a stormwater event where a lot of surface rainwater came and sort of flooded their tailing storage and overfilled one of the dikes. And so they were ordered to shut down and to modify the basin to mitigate against future storm events like that. And it looks like they've done the majority of that work around the basin, basically trenching out around it. So any of the little streams, I mean, it's bone dry probably 10 months of the year there, and they get most of the rain just in the summer. So most of that work looks like it was done, but it looks like it's incomplete. So one of the first things we're doing as well right now is going to be doing sort of an environmental audit, auditing the tailings basin and the current status of the existing permits, because this was a fully permitted facility before. We want to see what the status of those permits is, what we have to do to comply with them so that we can have them reactivated in time for the plant. But again, since this is a tailings recovery operation, we're not removing material from an actual mineral concession. We don't need a mining license in the traditional sense because we're not actually working with mineral concessions, but we still need the permits for the tailings storage facility and the usage of cyanide and things like that. So we want to get that done quickly because typically permitting is a longer lead time item. But we're hoping that with just a little bit of work, we can get that tailings basin up to the standards that were required when they had this event by Semarnat, which is the Mexican environmental agency. So that's one of the first things that we're doing as well. Okay,
why don't we move over to what I think of as a Malayo-Slandia trend. You have several concession groups there. You drilled a couple of them and you're still drilling, I guess. Why don't we walk through the results and what you think the implications are of the news you put out the other day here?
Sure. So we divide those claims into Tarachi North, Tarachi South. So Tarachi North is where most of those drill holes were from, specifically the San Javier mining concession. So we were following up there with some old historic drill holes from Magnico Eagle that had some pretty high grades over some really good widths, which we thought were targeting sort of these low angled structures. But based on the results of our own drilling, we found that the gold seems to be concentrated in actually steeper dipping structures, in particularly associated with some intrusive breccias. So we encountered these heavily mineralized breccias, sort of 20 to 30% pyrite mineralization. All of our drilling was pretty shallow. I think the deepest from surface intercept was probably only about 100 meters. So we're going to be following up on these drill results with some additional drilling, targeting the deeper extensions of these intrusive bodies, where typically these sorts of breccias generally have higher grades at depth. So that's kind of the plan right now. We also think there might be a bit of a trend of these intrusive bodies that goes from southwest to northeast. If you go about 1 kilometer or so off of our mining concession, there's a few more of these mineralized breccias that look like they've had some underground mining in the past, where we understand that the ore taken out of there was about 5 to 10 grams per ton. And that matches up pretty similarly with what we're seeing on our property as well. So there might actually be a trend that kind of cuts across the property. So we're going to be following up and doing some more field work to the northeast as well to see if we can find some of these other mineralized breccias on our mineral concessions, and then also following up on the drilling targeting the deeper extension of those.
I mean, do you have any, are you comfortable throwing a map or two up?
Yeah, I do. Let me just grab.
These are world premieres, ladies and gentlemen.
Never seen before elsewhere. So you can see here, holes 6 and 7. These are some of the holes that we just released. You can see 5.3, 9 grams per ton over about 5.5 meters on the right-hand side there. The gold seems to be sort of mostly in the footwall zone
Okay.
of the breccias, at least at the shallow areas that we've drilled so far. And then you can see we have a couple of proposed holes here, 10 and 12, targeting the deeper extents of this intrusive body. Then hopefully we'll find better grades and potentially better widths at depth as well.
Do you have a comparable? Like if someone wanted to think about it in terms of deposit model, what project comes to mind, if any project comes to mind?
There is one that comes to mind. I think Minera Alamos, actually, one of their projects has a system of mineralized breccias, La Fortuna.
Okay.
I know that's a mineralized breccia. I don't know if it's identical to the sort of style that we have. I'd have to certainly have to follow up with our VP of Exploration, Lauren Warner, on that one.
Right.
But I know it's something that they have like a couple 100,000 ounces in. So
Right.
we're kind of early days in terms of identifying the breccia and its relationship to the gold. So I think after the next round of drilling, we'll have a better idea in terms of the potential extent, the potential volume, and what sort of tonnage we might be able to find here.
Okay.
And whether or not that'll justify, continuing rounds of drilling.
Right.
So that's up at the north. And then if we want to talk about La Dura as well on our Tarachi South Block concessions. So we've previously been drilling just from the old underground workings there at the La Dura mine.
Right.
We released one hole in the last press release. I wouldn't say it's disappointing, but it's certainly not what we saw in the previous rounds of drilling there, where we were getting pretty consistently 4.5 to 5.5 grams per ton over 15 to 20 meters. The best intercept on this hole was about 2 grams per ton over 10 meters. And that was targeting to the south. And so what we're planning with La Dura now is, while we still have the drill underground, we're going to do a few drill holes targeting the down dip eastern extension of the mineralized zone, and another one to the south as well. And then we'll also bring in a surface rig and do some surface drilling to the south of the La Dura mine. So I can bring up, let me bring up a couple of sections for you here. This shows the underground workings here on the left, and then to the right, that's actually an old open pit from the surface. And so we know that there's mineralization sort of in the eastern edge of the bottom of that pit as well. So in orange here, we have our new proposed holes, and the blue ones are the previously drilled holes. So we're testing to the east there and to the south, and then the look from surface here. So you have the La Dura mine at the north end here. About 300 or 400 meters to the south is another old sort of mining area called the Zaragoza zone. It's not as extensive as the La Dura mine, but it's kind of more some wormholes and adits. But the mineralization that they were targeting there is pretty much identical to what we've seen in La Dura. And so what we're doing now is kind of targeting that zone between those two mining areas. And then in addition to that, there's also the Baby Doll zone just to the west. And it is a northeast trending structure versus the sort of north-south between La Dura and Zaragoza. And so where these two zones intersect is actually our new priority target. As you know, most economic geology gold deposits are found at the intersection of structures. And so we're really excited about this new intersection that we found here down at La Dura. So
I mean, this map looks like pretty good news to me, because in all honesty, after I mean, without maps, and I saw yesterday's hole, and like you said, it wasn't, I was thinking of it as a miss because you weren't hitting the 4 or 5 gram stuff, which it wasn't. In fairness, it was 10 meters to 2 grams after all. But it looked to me like there were a couple of strike dip directions where you were probably cut off, but I didn't realize before that you had this much room to the south, or that there were other zones that you actually know about that were similar material. I mean, this seems to open things up a bit for you.
Yeah, I mean, the La Dura mine does seem to be bounded on the west by a fault, and a little bit to the right, to the north. Just to the north there, we think it kind of daylights not too far from the mine. So really the opportunity here is to the south and to the east. And I mean, really the last couple of weeks is the first time that Lauren's actually had an opportunity to get down to Mexico, actually be on the properties with our local geologists. He's down there now. He's been there probably for the last 3 or 4 weeks now, working on our projects and looking at the core and planning the next round of drilling. So it's certainly helpful that he's finally been there and been able to go actually visit these other mines and other old workings on the site, and finally put together some proper visuals for us.
Yeah, well, he was more than once when he and I talked in the past, he was pretty frustrated, but there was just nothing he could do because of COVID. He simply couldn't go down there. They weren't going to let him into the area, and he was pretty frustrated that he couldn't kind of literally get his arms around some of this stuff and look at it. So what's the So is there a rig or rigs drilling right now? Or
So nothing's turning at the moment. The underground drill rig at Ladura is still there, and so we can probably get that up and running in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And then we're also going to bring in another RC surface rig, do that surface drilling at Ladura, and bring back the man portable rig up at San Javier to do those proposed holes as well. So probably within the next 2 weeks, we should have some drills turning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was a good couple of updates. I mean, it's nice to see things kind of really starting to move forward now with Magistral, and it looks like you still have a bunch of target left here, more than I feared that you did, I guess, when I first read the release. And what about the other? I mean, there's several concession blocks that make up Tarachi North and South. Are you going to deal with any other blocks, or are you going to stick to these two areas for now?
These are certainly the two priority areas for now, but in Tarachi North, sort of the center block, we call that Pretoria. Yeah. There's definitely some interesting mineralization there. I know some of the recent field work that Lauren and the local geos have done. They've identified some potential targets there as well, some gossainous areas, some big stain zones. And there's been some historic drilling done in that area as well that's found typically lower grade over longer intercepts up in that area and on those claims. So I think the road that actually cuts through there that they have to take to San Javier. So it's possible that we'll also drill a couple short holes while we're on the way, just because it's easy to get to, and we might as well follow up on some additional targets. But for now, the other two are the main priorities.
Okay, and of course, the company's got lots of cash. You don't really need to do anything anytime soon, financing wise.
Yeah, we're pretty comfortable right now. I mean, we've just we'll have to spend about 2.3 million US for the Magistral acquisition, but then we don't have any other big financial obligations associated with that until we're actually in commercial production.
Right.
Yeah. So,
okay.
And once we have the PEA, we'll have a better idea of sort of what sort of cash we'll need to actually bring it into production, if we need to make some bigger purchases in terms of modifying the plant or not. But we'll have a better idea sort of later in the year on that.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. I mean, more exploration on the way. Hopefully the everything goes smoothly. The company's a gold producer early next year, and you guys are working on maybe bringing some other stuff in to extend the mine life and potentially enlarge the operation at the same time. So all in all, pretty good pair of updates. I think Tarachi's in good shape, lots of cash. The market's obviously got some interest. Now that Magistral's sort of underway, you can see more market interest coming in, and your volumes, your trading's been quite good, especially given that gold's been in the crapper for the last.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to most, you guys are actually trading quite well, so it's nice to see that. So thanks for the updates. We'll get back with you again, Cameron, once you get a little more news out. Tarachi Gold TRG on the CSE in Canada, and if you dare to trade the pinks, it's TRGGF. Good luck with that. Are you guys going to be? Do you think you'll be upgrading the U.S. listing at some point? Is that in the card?
I think so. Maybe later this year. We're also looking at maybe moving over to the TSXV later this year as well.
Okay.
So we'll keep you updated on that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for coming by, Cameron.
Thank you, Derek. Always a pleasure.
I'll talk to you again soon.